Welcome back to Indiana Newsdesk. Well, a new sheriff took over in Scott County at the beginning of this year and immediately promised to make the county a drug-free zone. Earlier this month, his office put together a press release titled, "We Mean What We Say." It details more than a dozen drug-related arrests officers made during the first 2 weeks of January. The charges range from unlawful possession of a syringe to marijuana dealing. But public health advocates worry about how the aggressive stance on drugs could impact rehabilitation efforts in the county at the heart of a devastating HIV outbreak a few years ago. Reporter Barbara Brosher sat down with Sheriff Jerry Gooden to talk about his controversial approach.
What challenges do you think are biggest for this community here in Scott County?
Well, our challenges really are no different than any other county. Obviously, we're all dealing, with the drug issue. And we have a plan, obviously, to battle that head on, and we think we've got a plan that's going to work. Coming from a small county, obviously, challenges are money. A lot of the problems and a lot of the issues that we have need money to be solved, or should have, large amounts of money, I should say, I guess, to be solved. Being a small county, we don't have the tax base and the resources to be able to do what we would like to do, so we have to a lot of times go to plan B.
Pretty soon after you took on this position, officially took over as sheriff, you announced kind of an aggressive plan to tackle this drug problem. Can you tell me what the strategy is?
Yeah, there? Absolutely. There's no secret to the strategy. We want everybody to know. My very first day in office, I declared Scott County a drug-free zone, basically saying that we will not tolerate any drug activity. It doesn't matter if you're dealing, possessing, or whatever you're doing. As a matter of fact, we said if you're traveling on the interstate or you're traveling on our roadways, if you're carrying drugs, we don't even want you to come through our county. We were very strong on that issue, and what we told people is that you're either going to be with us or you're against us with the community. And what I meant by that is you're either going to, if you're dealing drugs, you're going to quit dealing drugs, and you're going to be a part of our society, and we're all going to get along well together, or if you don't want to do that, then we ask you just to move out of the county, just go somewhere else. And if you don't want to do those two things, then what we're going to do is we're going to arrest you. Because the vast majority, the silent majority in this county says enough's enough. And I feel like that's one of the reasons why that I got elected. I ran on a very aggressive platform on what I plan to do, and I'm going to follow up.
A lot of people from other parts of the state, when they hear Scott County, one of the first things they do think about is the HIV outbreak and the drug use that was associated with that. And one thing that health officials have said has really helped curb that HIV outbreak is this syringe exchange that's going on. Where does that fall into this kind of aggressive strategy you have with these cracking down on the drug problems and arresting people who are involved in that activity, when there's a syringe exchange that is legal and people may be participating in?
Here's how we answer that question is this. With our strategy that we have, it's not a one-thing strategy where we're arresting everybody. There ain't nobody stupid enough across this whole United States to think that you can arrest yourself out of this problem. Okay, we know that. Part of our strategy is this: we are aggressively attacking drug dealers. Okay, that's what we're going after, drug dealers. Okay, aggressively, and that's what we've been doing. Okay, now not only are we aggressively going after the drug dealers, but we're aggressively, going after those folks that are doing the drugs. And here's the reason why. Okay, we're going to offer them help when they get inside this jail. We're going to start a rehab inside this jail. I've got my jail commander now. We're putting together a program, and we're going to be working with the Department of Correction. We're going to be working with our local agencies, CEASE here in Scott County is what it's called, but drug coalition type thing. We're working with all these entities. We're working with churches. We're working with everybody that says they've got a solution to this problem of addiction.
Some advocacy groups do worry, though, that such an aggressive stance could put fear in some people's minds who maybe are trying to participate in the syringe exchange to prevent the spread of disease, or perhaps make people afraid to even seek out help. What do you say to those critics?
If they're not dealing drugs, what would they be afraid of? We're offering them help. We're offering them a chance to succeed. We're offering them hope. Obviously, as a law enforcement officer, I have to say, and adamantly against a needle exchange. As a law enforcement officer, okay, and there's probably not too many law enforcement officers that's going to tell you that they're for a needle exchange, okay? As a law enforcement officer strictly, I'm against the needle exchange. However, I'll tell you this, I'm not a dum-dum. okay? And if the Surgeon General of the United States of America, who was our Surgeon General or health advisor in Indiana at the time that said we needed a syringe exchange, if that person tells me that we need a syringe exchange, guess what? I'm not stupid enough to tell that guy who is educated, who knows exactly what they're talking about, that's their business. I'm not going to tell them, no, we don't need a needle exchange, because I'm not educated enough on the subject to know if we need a needle exchange.
Joining us now is Carrie Lawrence, Director of Project Cultivate in the Rural Center for AIDS STD Prevention at the IU School of Public Health. Thanks for coming on the show. Appreciate it.
You're welcome.
So what do you think of the sheriff's declaration for a drug-free zone now that you've seen the story?
I think my initial reaction and my first thoughts were our current Attorney General, who's essentially the boss of our state law enforcement, has a very similar narrative. However, as Sheriff Gooden stated, that, you know, we're in a public health crisis, and so things that we probably thought of a couple years ago in terms of injection drug use or substance misuse in general was that it was almost just a criminal justice issue and really not brought forth as a public health issue as much. And so it was good that he at least acknowledged what who was Commissioner Adams, now as U.S. Surgeon General Adams, stated, is that we need a public health approach to this opiate crisis.
Mm-hmm. So how could this aggressive approach affect some of these programs like the Syringe program that was mentioned in the story?
Well, I think he even acknowledged it, that people would be fearful of going to seek out those types of harm reduction services. And I would say from my involvement in harm reduction in this state as well as other states, that my colleague Chris Apert, who runs Indiana Recovery Alliance, the work that we've been doing is to recognize that if we start to be hard on crime specifically associated with this disease, people will be fearful in their attempts to access services such as harm reduction, syringe exchange, anything else in which they think that they may be arrested because of the consequences of their disease.
You know, we've seen this national shift in mindset from criminalization to rehabilitation.
Right.
How is Indiana dealing with that type of mindset change?
Well, I think in terms of, especially FSSA is doing a really great job of making sure we are attempting to expand treatment options and coverage for treatment. However, looking at this still as an epidemic, we don't even have the infrastructure in place yet for everyone to have an easy access to those care and services. And so a lot of times our harm reduction services is the triage as well as the linkage to those services, primarily among a population that has been highly stigmatized. I mean, I think if anything, we learned that was a lessons learned from Scott County HIV outbreak, is that so many times people who use drugs are out of the public eye and kind of in the shadows because of the stigma associated with the disease.
Carrie, got to cut you off there, but thank you very much. Appreciate it.
You're welcome.